Welcome to the Corner Office, where we bring you the latest news from the world of commercial real estate, the greatest voices in the industry, and the corporate chats you've been missing. Let's get to it.
Okay, guys. So, in an interesting news flash, we've obviously got REdimension, who's raised now just over 200 million rand, or in dollars, what's that, nine point something million dollars, to invest into. I don't know if it's only going to be the South African PropTech industry, but we'll get into that. And obviously, this has been raised with Matt Marshall, who's ex-Standard Bank.
Standard Bank, yeah.
Ex-Standard Bank, and we'll get into that a little bit further with you. And obviously we've got Peter Clark, who's now sitting in London and is in the small picture. Hi, Pete. I'll make you bigger a bit later. But why don't you, I'd love to chat just about what's actually happened. It's been from the time we first met, and obviously talking PropTech, we've got our own investment into PropTech as our own system. But what you've looked at is a much broader market, and you've gone through the trials and tribulations of trying to educate the market as to investment and opportunity here. You've obviously also you've both left big careers to do this, so there was a lot of risk on your part. And obviously now with the success of your first round and being led by some serious investors. So yeah, why don't you run us through, Matt, maybe you start and give us a little background from where you've come from, Standard Bank, and how you decided to do this with Pete, and who your initial investors are, and then Pete, maybe you just tell us a little bit more about like where you're thinking about going with all of this bank, as so to speak.
Perfect, thanks, John, and thanks for having us on your show. I suppose the journey that Pete and I have taken goes back some 2.5 years now, where he and I, we go back a long way. Our careers have sort of overlapped. Pete was on working on the property investment team for 91 Asset Management, and I was running the real estate advisory business for Standard Bank. So our careers have overlapped for a long period of time, and we go back as far as university, where we were in Res together. And we started to look at kind of the property sector through a different lens. I mean, he and I are both close to a lot of the real estate executives. We sort of knew what the challenges were that the sector were facing. And we started to look at some of the personal challenges that we were having with our own real estate and wondering whether there isn't a better way of doing business. So we started out our journey actually building or developing an idea of our own in the PropTech space. And then through various meetings, various discussions, landed on this opportunity to develop what is now the first PropTech investment platform in South Africa. It has been a long journey, whereby obviously you've got to build the investment proposition and take it to market, and I suppose leveraging our network into the real estate sector, where we know a lot of the real estate executives. We thought, well, this is going to solve a lot of their challenges. There isn't a lot of innovation capital coming into the sector. If you look at the size of the sector's problems, both in terms of the value of the sector, but in terms of its carbon footprint, it's a massive contributor to global greenhouse gases. It's just getting nothing in the way of innovation spend. So I think last year, fintech attracted over $1 billion.
Wow.
Third-party investment
In South Africa or globally?
In Africa.
Yeah, Africa.
And PropTech attracted $15 million of investment. And real estate's roughly 40% of global assets, and then roughly the same in terms of its contribution to greenhouse gases. So just a huge disconnect between the amount of money being spent to solve the problem and those parties that are leading kind of that innovation spend. So what we've seen globally were these independent venture platforms that have popped up, the biggest ones being in the US, in Europe, more recently in Asia, Australasia, Africa, North Africa, and we saw no reason for that platform to not exist here in South Africa. And what we'd seen is that they were backed by the big real estate players in those various markets. So the biggest one in the US that we had stumbled across was a platform called Fifth Wall, where today they've got $3.5 billion of assets under management invested purely into PropTech that services their investor base, which is by and large property investment platforms. So we looked to replicate that in the South African market. It wasn't an easy journey. The first meetings were with the C-suite guys in our investors. What is PropTech? What is our innovation strategy? Where are we going with technology in the South African market? So very much kind of the seeds of the discussion around how the businesses should be thinking about engaging with technology.
Gotcha. And Pete, you obviously come out of 91, so I've listened to a lot of Jeremy Gardner's asset management talks, etc. Like brilliant, always brilliant presentation, and very keen minds I find in the 91 business. I mean, from your perspective, when you first got into it, I mean, is there an obvious opportunity? I mean, we talk about PropTech 1.0, which was putting listings online, the aggregators, in a South African context, Property 24 and private property, etc. 2.0 was maybe the Lightstones and the likes of these things, which was aggregating massive data, maybe some of the deeds office stuff that they're doing. And then 3.0 is going to go down to building management, that kind of thing. Is that where the money's going at the moment? Where, there's all this money, you say, Matt was talking now about 3.5 billion was just one fund invested in PropTech. Where's the majority of this money going? What is the sector? What's the focus? What's the amazing opportunity? Please say market tracking data.
Thanks, John. So, I mean, it's interesting. And coming from an investment background, there's looking at a whole lot of the real estate investment landscape in South Africa, and there's nothing hugely exciting out there. I don't think. I think most of your kind of viewers will be aware the struggles, and you'll be aware of the struggles that the fundamental challenges that the market face. And I suppose what we're looking for is how tech can be a positive enabler within anyone's business to produce a range of better outcomes. So it's not tech for tech's sake, and I think some people don't quite know how to define or what does PropTech mean, because it can be quite a fluffy term. But it's really where technology, or through the use of technology, you can get a range of better outcomes to make your assets more productive, more efficient, more sustainable, reduce costs, let vacant space better or quicker, use data to make more informed decision making, improve the user experience of the end users. So ultimately, it comes down to how is the asset leased, sold, used, managed, developed, and how can technology be an enabler in that space? So it's actually quite a broad mandate. So you mentioned data is one of the big things. There's a very limited amount of data that's available, particularly in the commercial space in South Africa. It's operated in a reasonably opaque manner, which has worked for a lot of players because they've had a so-called kind of information advantage relative to others.
Yeah.
But you see globally
there's no
that's
Bloomberg
largely
terminal for real estate. Yeah.
And there's never going. I mean, it's real estate different to all other asset classes. There's never going to be a perfect science, but having the right comparables and having the right market data does lead to informed decision making. Yeah. User experience is another big thing, and I mean, you can almost walk through it how you as a user engage in assets. So you step into whether it be your home, your retail, mall, your office block, your gym. It's how you get access, how you come in, how you park, how you gain access to the building. What is the experience? How do you book space within that building? How do you utilize space in that building? Then from the manager's perspective, how do they manage that? How do they, first of all, get you in, sign the contracts, find you to get you in? How do they manage you throughout your life cycle? How do they understand your credit profiling? If you've got to get debt, if you're buying an asset, how does that work? How does that get? How do those processes and systems work? Then how can you optimize the use of that space to get the most kind of functionality from it? How you can reduce costs? How you can understand your water consumption, your electricity consumption, all of these big things, and then how you actually transact and trade on the assets. So there's a lot of different kind of touch points that we can play on, but we're really going to be led by our investment partners, our investors into the fund, to say not only do we want to deliver you good investment returns, but the real premise is how can we start creating operating efficiencies in your business.
Let's talk about those guys. Who's invested? Who are your seniors here? And this is a closed end fund, so you've got your investment now. You're going to deploy. How have you structured it? Who's in? Who are the main guys? So
I'll say it's a closed-ended or limited life fund, but we've got a fundraising window of 18 months. So we've had a first close, and we can accept additional investors for the next 18 months. Yeah. So we've got just north of 200 million on our first close. The anchor investors being Growth Point Properties, Investec Property Fund, and Rand Merchant Bank. But then also as investors, we've got Liberty 2 Degrees, we've got Sphere Holdings, as well as some other investors, family offices who find it interesting. So great investor grouping, and together those investors represent north of 650 buildings, plus north of 11 million square meters of space, and I think it's about 250 billion rands worth of assets. So if we start to think of it not just in the terms of the capital we've got and the potential co-investment capital that can come alongside that, but the distribution base of properties to really get
scale within a number of the different tech companies we're investing in.
It's an interesting way to think about it. People are thinking, it's quite a, is it a risky thing to invest into, all the rest of it? But from what I'm hearing about your investors and the seniors in this thing, there are those guys who are saying, we like the space, it's an investment, it's a risk play for us. But for other guys, it's them saying, actually, we want to accelerate the curve of PropTech into what we can do, which will run efficiencies into our buildings, which are run into billions of rands worth of buildings. If we can get an incremental gain of X%, that's what it works out to. We've paid for our investment, and there you go. So it's actually quite clever. And obviously, if there's a market for them, there's a market for the rest of the building owners in South Africa, as it were. So it's actually quite a clever play.
I mean, I mentioned the size of the market here that we're talking to. We've spoken to north of 100 investors, lots of family offices, lots of sort of investment holding vehicles. They're all aware of this PropTech opportunity, but there's this nervousness of entering it without seeing some significant sort of leading investment from the sector itself. There are a number of reasons they want to be in deals kind of directly, et cetera, that perhaps we haven't kind of aggregated capital initially from them. But we see this as a great sign that the sector is taking technology seriously, both from an investment, but also from an adoption, more importantly, perspective. And I think that's a great signal to other potential investors coming into the sector that the sector is actually at the starting point of its growth.
Sure. Brilliant. And do you have a lot of interaction with those? You talked about now the fifth wall investors and those guys. Do you have a lot of interaction there? I mean, it must be fascinating to talk to the guys who've obviously got quite a significant investment, and they must be looking globally. I mean, it's not tech just because of what it is a global business. I mean, we're obviously solving for a couple of South Africa specific things, and even with our market data, certainly the stuff that we've built, it's very South African specific. I mean, we'd have to change a few things to be able to roll it out in another country, for example. Hopefully we can. But it is very much that. Now, I'm assuming from what we've seen, and we've gone and looked at the likes of Property Raptor, for example, and some of the other, platforms globally which do the similar thing, which are market aggregators, and so they're trying to achieve a specific outcome. All of these solve something and then not something else, so there's always one piece missing, as it were, from the part. And so everyone's trying to solve, we're going to solve those three things plus the other thing, and then someone said, we're going to solve those four things plus another thing. And so it's quite an interesting space. So I'm assuming that they would be keeping a keen eye on what you're doing and what you're investing in South Africa.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got close relationships, and there's a number of them, and suggest your readers go and have a look at these guys. So Fifth Wall being the biggest Matt mentioned, but there's also MetaProp, which is probably the first guys to do it based out of the US. There's Pi Labs, which are the big guys in UK, PropTech One, Concrete Ventures. There's a range of these guys. And if you go look at the Fifth Wall story, which they've kind of grown to market dominance, they've got north of 100 of the global real estate guys behind them. So everything from the Prologis, the Seagrows, to the Brookfield, to the Landsec, British Land, all the big global real estate players have all seen this as a route to their kind of tech and innovation strategy. But they're not saying we don't need to do it at all. They're saying we need a partner and we need help. And there's a range of reasons why I think real estate guys just can't do it everything themselves. Now, most of the real estate guys, tech is not their kind of core DNA. It's not the thing they wake up and think about. They want to lead space. What is my yield, and go forward. So having partners who can help them is really important, but it's actually important on both sides of it. And it's a big part of the role we play, because you mentioned like what are the companies doing and what are the challenges and what you're solving for. But a lot of tech companies, they think they're solving for the right challenges, but often their product is not positioned in the right way. And they don't have the right feedback loop to help pivot and grow and scale their business in the direction where it's really solving for the challenges of the big real estate guys. So a key part of our ecosystem and our kind of model on how we've set up this business is to say, there's some level of reverse consulting and making sure that we understand the challenges of all our big investors and the big real estate guys, and we understand the evolution of the products we're investing in and how we can make sure there's clear product market fit and scale it in the right direction, and giving the real estate guys a seat at the table to be able to grow and scale it out in the right way and solve for the right challenges. And the global real estate guys, I suppose what's a bit different from PropTech to fintech or other things, there's no kind of one-stop global solution that, works here, works everywhere. So there's a lot of kind of local development going on in all different markets. So we kind of work closely and think closely and leverage off a lot of what the global players are doing. But SA market is quite specific, and so we'd look to really galvanize that and build out the ecosystem in South Africa for the benefit of our investment partners.
Guys, brilliant. I'm really excited to see this investments come through, and I just wanted to say, I'm really impressed with your tenacity and just the hard yards have been put in here. I think you need and deserve to be rewarded for it, and it's just brilliant to see. So, yeah, well done, guys. And I'm excited to chat to you in September when we delve into PropTech in a little bit more detail. But for now, I think everyone's just really interested in the news and basically what's happened. I'm sure your phone's ringing off the hook, so I don't want to keep you guys. It must be a busy time of day for you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, John. Appreciate the time.
Okay. Sure.
Thanks, John.
Thanks,
Always
guys.
good to speak.